Good day, it's February 4th, 2022. Our hearts continue to be with the family of the victims of the two California mass shooting in Southern California and Northern California. I'm Esmeralda Padilla-Gould and welcome to The Pulse.
And I'm Sam Buban.
In Monterey Park, California, a small city outside Los Angeles, California, 11 people died and one more died in the hospital after a 72-year-old man shot people in a dance studio. The perpetrator also died in an apparent suicide. This thing happened as Chinatowns all around the country are celebrating the Chinese Lunar New Year. A brave young man seen in surveillance video was considered a hero when he disarmed the shooter and took possession of the gun, which would have been used by the assailant to kill more people had he not been disarmed. A young man named David Tsai wrestled with the gunman to disarm him and is being hailed as a hero for his bravery in confronting the gunman and saving lives. In a separate incident, a 67-year-old gunman in the city of Half Moon Bay in San Mateo County, California, killed 7 people in an unprovoked attack. The only thing common about the two separate incidents is that the shooters were senior citizens, a rare occurrence in this country, and we hope it will never happen again.
In the U.S. House of Representatives, Speaker Kevin McCarthy has blocked the inclusion of California Congressmen Adam Schiff and Eric Swalwell. Illinois Congresswoman Ilhan Omar is also a target by McCarthy and his allies from the Freedom Caucus faction, dubbed by many as the Attention and the Chaos Caucus, from joining her committee. But Speaker McCarthy is already facing pushback from regular Republican lawmakers who are opposed to the revenge move to remove the 3 high-profile Democratic lawmakers from the committee. Indiana Congresswoman Victoria Spartz announced she will not support McCarthy's decision to oust Congress members Adam Schiff, Eric Swalwell from the Intelligence Committee, and Ilhan Omar from the Foreign Affairs Committees. 2 more Republican House members joined Congresswoman Spartz in opposing Speaker McCarthy's move for expulsion, namely Congresswoman Nancy Mace of South Carolina and Congressman David Joyce of Ohio. Commented that committee assignments should be within each party's confine. He likely meant that McCarthy should mind about the Republican committee members and leave the Democrats alone on who sits in the committee. A 4th member of Congress from Saratoga, Florida, Congressman Grieve Stube, said he won't be in Congress for the vote on the expulsion as he is in Florida recovering from an injury. McCarthy's position on this matter had just gotten complicated. There may be other defections from the Republican ranks when this matter is put to a vote on the House floor.
The Fulton County Special Grand Jury has completed its report. It was one of the most comprehensive and swift investigations relating to the different facets of the conspiracy to overturn Joe Biden's win in the Georgia election by Donald Trump and his allies. A Superior Court judge in Fulton County, Georgia, will have to decide to release or not to release the full report of the Fulton County Special Grand Jury. According to Fannie Willis, District Attorney of Fulton County, Georgia, the Special Grand Jury is a fact-finding jury and does not have the power to issue indictment for possible crimes committed. But the information can be given to a regular grand jury who will return indictments to people involved in the criminal efforts. One of the possible evidences that will be presented in the criminal trial is the phone call of the former President Donald Trump to Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger about finding for Trump 11,800 votes, for which Raffensperger asserted the truth, saying the Georgia numbers are correct and reliable. In that phone call, Trump made some kind of threat to Raffensperger.
In Memphis, Tennessee, the Shelby County District Attorney Steve Mulroy announced last Thursday that 5 former police officers from Memphis, Tennessee, has been indicted on charges of murder and kidnapping resulting in the death of Tyree Nichols on January 3rd on a traffic stop. Nichols, a 29-year-old African-American, was seriously beaten by the police officers during the arrest and died at the hospital on January 10th from injuries he sustained. After a county grand jury investigation and evidence of assault were revealed, the grand jury returned an indictment for second-degree murder and aggravated kidnapping against 5 police officers who had already been fired from the force. The 5 former police officers were charged with murder and aggravated kidnapping are Tadarius Bean, Demetrius Haley, Justin Smith, Emmett Martin, and Demond Mills Jr. According to District Attorney Mulroy, all of those charged had surrendered and are now in custody.
Finally, the United States will send a new generation of Abrams tanks to Ukraine. This was announced by the Biden administration. Ukraine has long been asking to have these tanks in their fight against the Russians who invaded their country in February 2022, almost a year now. Germany, who has been delaying on their promised Panzer tanks, had finally come to a decision to send those German tanks to Ukraine. Germany has been long criticized by other EU members for the delay in delivering their promise to send those tanks. Russia continued to suffer serious defeats in Ukraine, even as Putin's health continued to deteriorate. According to intelligence sources in Europe, there has been rumors of Russian President Vladimir Putin just disappearing in silence from the Kremlin scene, and he battles an advanced stage of cancer. There will be a power struggle in the Kremlin as to who will take over as the next president. Many of the oligarchs will be the true power players, and among them is Prigozhin, an oligarch who owns the private army Wagner Group. The Biden administration has sanctioned the Wagner Group as an international terrorist organization responsible for hundreds of human rights violations in Africa, Syria, Chechnya, and Ukraine. The sanction will have a purpose of strangling the company's banking and cash capability. So Uncle Sam, what's the big battle now in the House of Representatives?
It is like a perennial battle almost every year. It's the debt ceiling. Okay? It's the House of Representatives that first discuss and approve whether to raise or not the debt ceiling that the United States government can have. Okay? It's a legal, approval to increase or not to increase the debt limit of the United States. And we're talking about trillions of dollars. Okay? During the time when President Donald Trump was the president, there was a struggle over this also, that it took a very long time for the House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate to decide whether to raise the debt ceiling. That's like the limit. Okay? If we don't, or if the House of Representatives does not approve increasing our debt limit,
Yeah, what would happen?
we won't be able to pay the debt, and that will ruin the credibility and credit of the United States government. Okay? During that time, in Donald Trump's time, we indeed, the United States government's credit rating went down. Okay? It's like from AAA to like a double A or like a triple B. And if this happens, that means we won't be able to pay. The United States government borrows money from banks, okay, when it doesn't have the money to spend on whatever is already in the national budget. So they borrow money from banks, and then in turn, the United States government, they issue this like government notes and saying, okay, when this matures, we are going to pay the value of these notes or whatever is the loan. And if the Republicans will stand their ground and say, no, we're not increasing the debt limit anymore, then we won't be able to pay the debt, and the credit rating of the United States will automatically plunge. I mean, if you have a bad credit, no bank will loan you money. So that is the big battle right now, and it's Kevin McCarthy knows that, and his allies, especially the Freedom Caucus, which many had dubbed as like the Chaos Caucus, like Jim Jordan and his cohorts. They just want to delay this and make the government fail so that they can say, you see, that was the Democrats that caused, and the Biden administration that was the cost of this failure. So they can just have a talking point for the next election. We are going to take a commercial break. When we come back, we will continue with our analysis on the January 6th committee executive summary. On that report, we will analyze what its contents are. So please don't go away.
With the many recent changes and focus on immigration law, now more than ever is the time to seek the help you need from an attorney you can trust. As an immigrant myself, I know the many difficulties and hardships involved in immigrating to this great country. With more than 10 years of experience in handling immigration cases, our firm can provide the necessary answers and solutions to your needs. Call Calderon Law today so we can work together to help you get the peace of mind you and your loved ones deserve.
Welcome back to the polls as we continue to give you our analysis of the January 6th committee report based on the executive summary. For those who missed our previous broadcast about the committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol, we bring you the 17 findings that are listed in the executive summary of the report, and we will continue where we left off last time. We are now on findings number 14. So basically what the report is trying to prove is based on their interviews, investigations, all data they could gather, there were no Antifa at the Capitol riot participating. Unfortunately, many of the Republican Congress representatives were spreading the word that and making assertions that it was Antifa who was responsible for the attack, when in fact none of the Antifa members or any left-wing groups were even there. It was just their way of watering down the gravity of the situation and pointing at other people or another group to blame, which is very common whenever something bad happens where Republicans are involved. So finding number 14, no Antifa. Finding number 15, neither the intelligence community nor law enforcement obtained in advance of the January 6th on the full extent of planning by President Trump, John Eastman, Rudolph Giuliani, and their associates to overturn certified election results. Such agencies apparently did not and potentially could not participate the provocation President Trump would offer the crowd in his ellipse speech. That President Trump would spontaneously instruct the crowd to march to the Capitol, that President Trump would exacerbate the violent riot by sending his 2:24 p.m. tweet condemning Vice President Pence, or the full scale of the violence began. No intelligence community advanced analysis predicted exactly how President Trump would behave. No such analysis recognized the full scale and the extent of the threat to the Capitol on January 6th. So here's what it's saying. Okay. The very significant aspect of why the intelligence community could not predict what was going to happen that day, even though there were chatters, there were information about, some of what the bad players like the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers would do, was they did not predict, the intelligence community did not predict that Donald Trump would make a speech in the ellipse to rile up the crowd and says, you march into the Capitol and you fight like hell, but if you don't fight like hell, you will have no more country. So that part he didn't, the intelligence community did not anticipate. Nor did they anticipate that at 2:24 p.m. he would exacerbate, meaning he'll just aggravate the situation by sending a tweet saying that Vice President Pence has no courage to do what he was supposed to do, and that even angered the crowd even more, to the point that they were looking for Mike Pence to hang him. So that was finding number 15. Finding number 16. Hundreds of Capitol and DC Metropolitan Police officers performed their duties bravely on January 6th, and America owes those individuals immense gratitude for their courage in the defense of Congress and our Constitution. Without their bravery, January 6th would have been far worse. Although certain members of the Capitol Police leadership regarded their approach to January 6th as all hands on deck, the Capitol Police leadership did not have sufficient assets in place to address violent, lawless crowd. Capitol Police leadership did not anticipate the scale of the violence that would ensue after President Trump instructed tens of thousands of his supporters in the ellipse crowd to march to the Capitol, and tweeted at 2:24 p.m. Although Chief Stephen Sund raised the idea of National Guard assistance prior to January 6th, the Metropolitan Police took an even more proactive approach to the January 6th and deployed roughly 800 officers, including responding to the emergency calls for help to the Capitol. Rioters still surged forward, and immediately in the immediate aftermath of Donald Trump's 2:24 p.m. tweet, the Department of Justice raided a group of federal agents at Quantico, Virginia, and in the District of Columbia, anticipating the January 6th could become violent, and then deploy those agents once it became clear that the police at the Capitol were overwhelmed. Agents from the Department of Homeland Security were deployed to assist. So here's what was happening there according to the findings of the January 6th committee. The Capitol Police did not have the necessary resources to counter such a big violent crowd. Okay? There were 800 personnel total that were deployed, and that includes, the augmented force after the Capitol was already under siege. But they do not have the equipment, to counter the violent demonstrators. They didn't have enough of those what we call all the riot gears, anti-riot gears that a regular police department has, and at that big volume. And then it also reveals that when the Capitol attack was already in progress, the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security actually deployed their force. Their agents were on standby before the attack, and they did so, deploy them when the Capitol was breached, and as well as when it was under attack. So that's what really happened there, and we are going to continue with the next finding. Finding number 17, and this will be last of the 17 findings. President Trump had authority and responsibility to direct deployment of the National Guard in the District of Columbia, but he never gave any order to deploy the National Guard on January 6th or any other day, nor did he instruct any federal law enforcement agency to assist. Because the authority to deploy the National Guard had been delegated to the Department of Defense, the Secretary of Defense could and ultimately did deploy the Guard. Genuine concern that Donald Trump might use the military in support of his efforts to overturn the election. Remember the talks about, in some interviews and all the talking of Trump supporters and his allies that the president should deploy the army or the National Guard to confiscate ballots that were supposedly fraudulent, precincts that says that where he lost, and they were going to confiscate the ballots. That was cause for a genuine concern in the military. Okay? And also, the foremost, most important thing in the finding number 17 is that the president did not exercise his duty to defend our country, defend Congress from these rioters. He did not order the National Guards to be deployed while he was just in his lunchroom at the White House residence watching the horror unfold. And that is contrary to his oath of office to defend the country and to defend the Constitution of the United States. And the deployment of the National Guards, because of the many frantic calls from senators and congressmen, Chuck Schumer and the Speaker Nancy Pelosi asking the Secretary of Defense to deploy the National Guard. And the Secretary of Defense did indeed deploy the National Guard to protect the Capitol. But so many, after 3 hours, more than 3 hours of tense, violent attack on the Capitol had already taken place. So folks, a word from me is that, you know, the country, our Constitution had to be defended at all cost, okay, from despots and fascist rulers who wants to topple our democracy. And in this case, in January 6th, democracy won. And more so, it was evident that in the 2022 election, people remember that what happened on January 6th. And many came out to vote for a person to be the next president who loves our democracy and who is willing to defend it at all costs, and as well as the many lawmakers who got re-elected to Congress, both in the House of Representatives and the United States Senate. So thank you for joining us on our report on the January 6th committee. And back to you, Esmeralda.
We're running out of time, but please join us again next week as we feature more interesting news for you. I'm Esmeralda Padilla-Gould, and thank you for watching The Pulse.
And I'm Sam Buban. Thank you for watching and have a blessed week.